So we will continue our discussion on history. In the last session, we have talked about Simon Commission recommendations, and then we have seen the protests related to Simon Commission. Congress boycotted, Congress rejected a Simon Commission, and then the British government actually challenged the Congress that you come up with a devolution formula which is acceptable to all sections of Indians like Muslim League, okay, and princely states and Hindu Mahasabha. And we have seen Congress actually took up this challenge and appointed Motilal Nehru to come up with recommendations related to further devolution of power. And we have seen Nehru report. Okay, in between we have also seen Delhi proposals, which were the demands of Muslim League or the demands of Jinnah. The 4 proposals we have seen, and then we have also seen the suggestions or the demands of Hindu Mahasabha. And there are certain problems with Nehru report which was not acceptable to Muslim League. So Muslim League was not ready to accept it, and because of that, British government rejected Nehru report because the condition was that it should be acceptable to all sections like Muslim League, Hindu Mahasabha, etc. Okay, so since it was not acceptable to Muslim League, Nehru report was rejected by the government. And after this, we have talked about Gandhi's 11 demands. Since Simon Commission recommendations rejected by Congress and Congress report, that is Nehru report, was rejected by British government, Gandhi came up with 11 demands. Okay, and this 11 demands we have discussed, and out of this, one of the demand was related to abolition of salt tax, and Gandhi took up this issue to launch civil disobedience movement. And I've told you why Gandhi took up this particular issue to launch civil disobedience movement, right? Otherwise Gandhi would have taken land revenue issue, because one of the demand in that 11 demands was related to land revenue, but it might have some socially divisive impact because zamindars who may become the losers will join hands with British. Okay, so that is the reason why Gandhi took up salt as the issue to launch civil disobedience movement, because salt is a basic essential commodity which is going to affect all. And when you're taxing salt, even for using it for personal consumption, or if you're manufacturing it for personal consumption, and Gandhi called it as evil tax because you're even exploiting the poorest of the poor. Okay, and Gandhi know there won't be any socially divisive impact if you take this as the issue to launch civil disobedience movement. And we have seen the civil disobedience movement, how it started and what the supports, and by far it was the largest mass movement, and all those things we have discussed. And then we have talked about roundtable conferences. In the first roundtable conference, Congress did not participate, and it was a major setback for British because their claim that they are incorporating all sections of Indians in the discussion related to further devolution of power was actually challenged because the major organization Congress did not participate. So in the second roundtable conference, the British government was very keen on bringing Congress, and then Gandhi-Irwin talks began. We have discussed about Gandhi-Irwin talks and the major points related to Gandhi-Irwin talks in the previous session, and the Congress decided to participate in the second roundtable conference, and the official go-ahead was given in the Karachi session in 1931, and Congress participated. Gandhi on behalf of Congress participated, and during the session separate electorate for backward caste was given through communal award. And we have discussed about Pune Pact, which was signed between Ambedkar and Gandhi, and then Gandhi withdrew from this roundtable conference because of the communal award, and that later ended in Pune Pact, and then communal award was called off. Okay, so that was about the second roundtable conference, and the significance is that this was the only roundtable conference which was attended by the Congress. And the significance of Gandhi-Irwin Pact was that this was for the first time that a viceroy is signing any agreement or treaty with the Indian. Okay, so we have discussed that in the third roundtable conference, Congress did not participate, and all these three led to, and the Simon Commission recommendation led to 1935 Government of India Act. We have also seen a brief debate between Gandhi and Ambedkar and their political ideas, and I've told you you need to prepare questions like this. In 2015 that was asked. In 2016 the question which was asked was related to Gandhi versus Subhash Chandra Bose, the ideology or the differences in ideas between Gandhi and Subhash Chandra Bose. Okay, so we have seen those kinds of questions. Now in this session what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about 1935 Government of India Act and the election held after that, and the 28 months of Congress rule we are going to evaluate. So that will be a prelims question, 1935 Government of India Act, the election, and the 28 months of Congress rule, and certain other things can be prelims question as well as a very, very important mains question also, the 28 months of Congress rule. Okay, so let's start the discussion. So first we'll discuss about 1935 Government of India Act quickly. Okay, so Government of India Act 1935. Now the importance or the significance of 1935 Government of India Act is, you will see the maximum devolution of power here. Okay, this is by far the biggest devolution of power because complete autonomy is given at the provincial level. If you remember 1919 Government of India Act, when we discussed, they introduced diarchy at the provincial level. Now in that there were governance at two levels, right? In the same level there were a rule of two, right? Viceroy is appointing a governor who will be controlling the reserve list in the provinces, and the transferred list is the areas upon which the elected members of the ministers can make law. Okay, so there was differences in the areas in which the ministers can handle. More powerful things are actually with the governor who was appointed by Viceroy through the reserve list, like police, law and order, budget, taxation, and all these are with the governor. Okay, so in 1935 that diarchy at the provincial level was done away, and autonomy was given. So first point that we need to discuss is actually provincial autonomy. So provincial autonomy was granted. Now there is no reserve list, no transferred list. Okay, so this reserve list, transferred list difference is now done away with. Now 40% power is actually given for the elected representative upon budget, law and order. Okay, and all these things are there. So this is what I told you, this is the biggest devolution of power so far. Okay, and next one, second point is diarchy, which was abolished at the provincial level, now going to be introduced at the central level. So at the central level diarchy. Okay, so very important here. When we talk about diarchy, it is similar to the provinces, like there will be a reserve list and there will be a transferred list. Okay, the transferred list is the list upon which the ministries or the ministers can make laws. Ministers have control over that. That means elected representatives have the control over the transferred list, and the reserved list is actually reserved for Viceroy. Earlier, governor who was appointed by Viceroy at the provincial level, now Viceroy directly will handle the reserve list at the center. That means law and order, taxation, budget, and everything is actually under the control of Viceroy. Okay, third point, it proposed a federal structure. Federal structure, that means three lists introduced: union list, okay, state list, and the concurrent list. Okay, so union list, state list, and the concurrent list, or rather I would write it as central list, state list, and concurrent list. We have discussed Government of India Act already twice. In the previous video also quickly I have discussed, and in a separate video related to all these acts we have covered. So that's the reason why I am covering it faster, because my objective for today's session is actually to discuss about the election and the 28 months of rule. Okay, so next point, princely states were allowed to preserve their identity. And if you remember, we have discussed about a Butler committee in 1927 in one of our previous video, and I have told you Butler committee was actually appointed to look into the demands of princely states, whether they want to continue their to preserve their identity under British rule or not, or that we have discussed in detail. So here I'm not talking about that. In fact, that was actually asked as a prelims question before. Okay, so princely states would be allowed to preserve their identity. Okay, now Butler committee is related to this. So Butler committee, I'm just writing here, we have already done this discussion. Butler committee 1927. See, if you have any doubt in any of the previous video that we have done so far, you can get in touch with me here. There's my Instagram ID, and you can join this Telegram channel so that you can watch all the videos which I've done so far. I've done this for sharing my videos. Okay, so you'll get only my videos over there. Okay, and next one, we have already discussed a bicameral legislature at the central level. Bicameral legislature at the central level, that means an upper house and lower house. Okay, so now I'll give you a question, and based on the question we will take up the further discussion. So there's going to be a mains question. So we will talk about the 28 months of Congress rule related to that particular question. Okay, so you see, if you get the question like this, simply significance of 1935 Government of India Act. We have already discussed this question and the answer in detail, right? So around 60% of our constitution is actually directly traced from 1935 Government of India Act. And secondly, the election which was held after 1935 Government of India Act gave some practical experience related to the parliamentary form of governments to the Indians for the first time. So all those things we have discussed in detail, so I'm not getting into the significance of Government of India Act 1935 since we have already discussed. Here I'm now going to focus on the Congress rule, 28 months of Congress rule and the election. Okay, first part will be discuss the significance of Government of India Act 1935. So discuss the significance of Government of India Act 1935 and 1937 election held at the provincial level. Okay, so there's the first question. Second one, discuss the significance of 28 months of Congress rule after 1937 election. To what extent it strengthened the Indian freedom struggle. Okay, so these are the two questions that we are going to answer. So here the prime important component is related to Government of India Act, which we have already done, 1937 election, which we are going to do, 28 months of Congress rule, that also we will do. So I'll talk about election and then 28 months of Congress rule. Now see, after this 1935 Government of India Act, actually Congress was again not happy with 1935 Government of India Act. So there was a debate emerged whether Congress need to participate or contest the next election which is due in 1937. If you remember, 1919 also the same thing happened. In 1919 Congress was not happy with the Government of India Act 1919 and they boycotted election which was in 1919, and then next election was due in 1924, and then 1922 onwards there was a debate which was related to contesting in election of 1924 between Swarajist and no changes. So some group was telling that you should contest election and some group was talking about not to contest election. Similar situation is coming here also. Some groups is of the opinion that you should be contesting election in 1937 because you will get more mass support and it will motivate the masses more. So we will get some experiences related to the governance which is in the pattern of parliamentary structure and all those things. There is one group and they follow the strategy of struggle, truce, struggle. Okay, second group within Congress like Subhash Chandra Bose, Nehru, etc. is of the opinion who are the socialist left. They are the leftist ideas. So they are of the opinion that we need to continue the struggle, mass movement or mass struggle to overthrow English. So they are of the strategy like struggle, victory strategy. So two groups like Swarajist and no changes in 1922. Here also one is of the strategy that struggle, truce, struggle. That means they are saying that in a single go it is very difficult to overthrow British and no immediate mass movement is coming. So at this point of time you contest the election and then do some constructive social work after forming the ministry, and then you go for a mass movement because it is very difficult to overthrow British in a single go. So struggle, truce, struggle, that is their strategy. But Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose is of the opinion that struggle, victory strategy would be better. Continuous mass movement till you overthrow English is what actually required. That is what struggle, victory strategy. So struggle, victory strategy. Let me write down this. What is struggle, true struggle strategy? It represented the Congress understanding that it was unlikely that a complete overthrow of the British could be achieved in one go. Okay, rather an incremental approach where periods of mass struggle was interspread with periods of truce or constitutional struggle. Some mass movement is required, then some constitutional struggle required. So one mass movement is just over now, that is civil disobedience movement. Now no major mass movement is coming, so there should be some constitutional struggle which is required. That is what one group arguing, struggle, truce, struggle strategy. But Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose is of the opinion that need a continuous mass movement till the time you overthrow the English, that is struggle, victory strategy. Okay, now they actually finally sought the Gandhi's opinion. So Gandhi is of the opinion that you can contest election, you can form the ministries, but you need to be very cautious when you are ruling. Okay, like you should not be treated like the English. Otherwise, if you are not trying to win the minds of the masses may think that the British and the Indians Congress is not different. They are both same. So whether it is English or Congress, it doesn't matter for the masses. So it should not affect negatively. So when you form the ministries, you should work for the people. So Gandhi gave a very cautious suggestion that you need to be very careful when you're forming the ministry. You should not act like a subordinate agent to British, or you should not be like partners of the junior partners of British. So this was a suggestion or recommendation which was given by Gandhi to Congress, and they have decided to contest election 1935. So let me write down that point also. Congress aimed to contest 1937 provincial election to boost the mass base of Congress, because you are now forming the ministries and provincial level you got the autonomy, so you can win the minds of the masses, or you can work for the masses and you can satisfy the demands of the masses. So it will be helpful for you to achieve the mind, or to get the support of the masses. Okay, mass base for Congress, and demonstrate the support Congress enjoyed amongst Indian masses. Okay, now secondly, Gandhi cautioned Congress that the 1935 Government of India Act was deliberately introduced by the British to attempt or to include the congressmen in provinces as subordinate agents of British rule by giving them a share of power, and diminishing the revolutionary zeal of freedom struggle, so that the zeal of freedom struggle will reduce. Okay, so this is what Gandhi said. It is actually deliberately done by the British, to include Indians in the power structure as subordinate agents of British. Okay, so as subordinate agents of British, so that you can share some power and you will be like junior partners of the British rule in India, so that what will happen is anything will be held in between. If you remember in 1857 revolt, after 1857 revolt, I've given you a statement of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Directly the anger of public went against English because there was no intermediary. So they are now looking for intermediary, and that you can see from 1882 local self-governments onwards, they are trying to get some junior partners in their rule. Okay, so secondly, that movement will also come down. Freedom struggle movement will also come down. So this was a deliberate attempt. Okay, now we will talk about election. 1937 elections held at the provincial level, and Congress got majority except in few areas, that is Muslim majority area obviously, NWFP, okay, Sindh, Punjab in the western part, and Bengal, Assam in the eastern part. Now out of this, NWFP, Punjab, not Punjab, Bengal and Assam, in these three areas, Congress did not get majority in these 5 areas, but in these 3 areas, even though Congress did not get majority, but Congress was the largest political party in this area. So Congress got the majority except in these 5 areas, and Congress formed the provincial governments. Now we need to look into some policies of Congress, like these are completely related to or connected to Gandhi's 11 demands that we have discussed. If you remember, Congress come up with that freedom of press was granted, carrying firearms was allowed. Okay, then land revenues actually decreased, tenancy rights were decreased. But related to industries, there was something called as Bombay Trade Dispute Act, which was controversial. If you remember, when we discussed about Bhagat Singh, when he threw a bomb in the Central Legislative Council, 2 bills were discussing, and out of which one was Trade Dispute Act. So the same thing was actually implemented by the Congress also, Trade Dispute Act, which is prohibiting the organization of bandh in industries. So that actually was very controversial, and they started thinking that British and the Congress is of not different, they are both are same. Okay, like that. So we will discuss quickly about the achievements of Congress, or the policies that the Congress brought in. The first one, generally to improve civil liberties, the first one actually granted freedom to press. Okay, freedom to press. So that is the first one. Second one, the political prisoners were released from jail. Political prisoners released from jail. Third one, restriction on carrying arms relaxed. So if you remember, these 3 were demands of Gandhi, also the 11 demands of Gandhi which were discussed. And then some of them in agriculture sector. So these were related to civil liberties. Okay, then agriculture sector, you can see the Gandhi's 11 demands. There I have discussed 2 points: reduce land revenue, then strengthen the tenancy rights, and both things are actually happening here. So provincial government decreased land revenue by 50%, and then tenancy rights were strengthened. Okay, so these 2 were the reforms. But again, the criticism is the Congress could not implement a large scale or a radical land reform here. And if you remember, that was actually one of the discussion which were going on from 1920s onwards due to the socialist ideas. If you remember, the true freedom that we have discussed related to Bhagat Singh was talking about social, economic and political freedom, not just political freedom. In that, if you need to achieve economic freedom, exploitation of man by man in all forms have to end. For that, radical land reforms are required. But here there is no such radical land reforms. Abolition of zamindars never happened here. Okay, so that was actually one of the criticism. Next criticism, or next one is industrial sector. In industry, so agriculture we have seen 2, land revenue decreased and tenancy rights strengthened. Industry, Bombay Trade Dispute Act. Bombay Trade Dispute Act 1938, which disallowed organization of bandh. Okay, disallowed, very important. This was also asked as a prelims question. Organization of bandh. Okay, so trade union questioned, and this was a trade union questioned the crackdown launched by Congress government in Bombay province. So actually Congress used police force to cracked down the protest against this, and they were of the opinion that whether the Congress or British, there is of no difference. Okay, so this is what you need to remember mostly when it comes to 28 months of Congress rule. Congress achieved majority in the election except in 5 areas. Out of this, in 3 areas they were the largest political party even though they were not in majority, and they came up with certain policies, something related to civil liberties, something in agriculture sector, something in industry. We have seen these are freedom to press, political prisoners released, restriction on carrying firearms relaxed, agriculture sector, land revenue decreased, tenancy rights strengthened, but the criticism was no land reforms, radical land reforms, not abolishing the zamindars. And then industry, Bombay Trade Dispute Act, which was also very controversial since it disallowed the organization of Bandh, and there was a severe police crackdown by the Congress, and workers actually criticized this by saying that Congress and British is of no difference. Okay. So on the whole, Congress was able to, build a positive reputation during this 28 months of Congress rule, and they got the mass support, especially in agriculture area. They got the support, and except some shortcomings in the industrial sector or in the industrial area related to the urban workers, that is related to the Bombay Trade Dispute Act. So I hope you understood what we have discussed today. We have talked about 1935 Government of India Act. Okay, and the significance of that. We have discussed about election which was held after that. Okay, and I'm not getting into the detail, I'm just focusing on that particular question which I have given to you. So election and the significance of that election and the significance of that 28 months of Congress rule. So the achievements of 28 months of Congress rule. Criticism also we have discussed. 2 criticism mainly. One was no land reforms. This is the criticism. Second one was related to that Bombay Trade Dispute Act. That was also a criticism because there was a severe police crackdown. Okay, so I'll stop here. See you guys. Next session we'll talk about 1937 to 1946. So